Hey guys, it's Faye from SolarFlow and I am back with an all new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read on a man named Ted Kaczynski, who also was known as the Unabomber. Now Ted had sent 16 homemade bombs between the years 1978 and 1995, which resulted in the death of 3 people and injuring 23 others. Now, prior to me looking into Ted, I was erroneously under the assumption that he was called the Unabomber because he was an unknown or unidentified bomber. However, I came to understand the reason the FBI gave him the moniker the Unabomber is because he had sent these bombs to universities and airlines. Now, at the time that I had connected to Ted's energy, he had actually shared with me that the reason he was sending these bombs to the universities and the airlines was not about the who. So it was not about the personal person he was sending the bombs to. It was not a personal vendetta, if you will, but rather to look at the what. And the what in this case were organizations or corporations that he had believed were perpetrating evils against society and all of mankind. He also had shared with me that he did not in any way want the bombings to be about himself, but rather this was his effort to shine a light on what he had perceived to be very real and very unjust things that were playing out in the world. So at the time I had connected to his energy and he had shared this with me, he also wanted to invite me in and give me the opportunity to come to understand what were the 3-dimensional components that had contributed to him becoming a bomber. And this is what he had shown to me. His energy was shown to me as being an expanse of darkness. However, he is not an expanse of darkness because he is dark and empty inside, but rather because he has been so hurt and so fractured along the way that he has had to learn to compartmentalize himself to the extreme so he will not be emotionally devastated again. So this is not someone like we had explored with the Charles Manson, where the way Charles Manson was shown to me was a huge airport hangar, but an airport hangar that was all white. So the ceilings were painted white, the walls were painted white, the floors were painted white, the corner where the floor and the wall connects were even painted white. So that way when you were in it, it almost felt like a void of any stimulation because all I could perceive when I was in his energy was this expanse of nothingness. However, Ted was not an expanse of nothingness, of just darkness, because he's a dark, evil soul and the lights are on in no one's home, but rather that there was parts of himself that were so dark because they were not exposed to light, if you will. And the reason they were not exposed to light is because the dark parts of himself he had had to compartmentalize as a self-protective mechanism so that he could not be hurt again. And what does compartmentalization look like? It's kind of like, imagine if you will, somebody can take certain parts of themselves and they can put it in a box, so to speak, lock the box, put the box up on the highest shelf in a closet, walk out of the closet, go back out into the world, and then they are devoid of whatever components or facets they have put into the box. So this was his effort, if you will, to survive in the world where he had to take parts of himself and tuck it away so that he could not be hurt again. So as you could imagine, when he shared this with me, I was like, okay, so tell me more. What were the contributing factors that you felt had left you so emotionally devastated? And this is what he shared with me. That what they had done with him in Harvard University had shattered him and shattered his world. And he showed it to me as such. Imagine, if you will, he was forced to watch as his heart was extracted from his chest. Then his heart was thrown on the floor, stomped all over his heart. The person who had stomped on his heart took their fingers, mushed it up in his heart, got a lot of blood on there, and then wrote on the wall in his blood, "You fool." Then his stomped on heart was picked back up. The person drank from it until there was nothing left of himself. And he had shared with me it was a cruelty that he did not know was even possible in the world. So I said, "Tell me more, please, about what was done to you at Harvard." And his response to me was fascinating. He had actually said to me, "Don't take it from me. I want you to go do your own research, because anything that you discover is going to be impartial and written by a third party. And it's not going to be associated with the way in which I viewed my life, because then it was going to be a biased sharing of the information. But it was rather him coming to me and saying, I'm coming to you with integrity. I don't want you to be biased at my experiences because they happened to me. And I'm the one that's sharing it with you. Go do your own research. Find out from a completely impartial third party what was done to me. And then come back and let's talk." So I did. And this is what I had found out when I researched him. So first and foremost, Ted Kaczynski was a genius. He had an IQ of 167. Now, because he was such a genius, he actually gained admission to Harvard University at the age of 16 years old. He was young, idealistic, and incredibly naive in the way in which the world could work and the way in which the world could hurt somebody, especially somebody that was idealistic. And when he was at Harvard, starting at the age of 16 years old, he was recruited into a 3-year-long study that he later referred to as, quote, the worst experience, end quote, of his life. And what made this the worst experience of his life? This was a study that was exploring the effects of stress on the human psyche. It started with students being recruited into the study under the guise that they were being recruited because they were special. And then they wrote an essay on their world view and personal philosophy. It was at this time that the people that were running the study had acquired willingly this information, that the student would be seated down in a room with bright lights shining on them and where they were wired up to electrodes. And then they were exposed to, quote, vehement and personally abusive, end quote, interrogations by the research team. And what was personally abusive? It was that their ideas and their beliefs were being attacked. These were young kids. He was 16. Even let's say there was kids that were 18, 19, 20. Their beliefs and their worldview was attacked by people that were older than them, that were on a research team. And how did they first come to be part of this research? They were told that they were special. So first they're told that they are special, and then their personal beliefs and worldview is attacked and shattered. Let's explore more. So first and foremost, in my researching this, I came to understand that this kind of a study well, they didn't have the kind of ethics at that time. By today's standards, this would have been considered to be unethical, and it would have violated all the main ethical principles of the American Psychological Association. They were getting away with murder, if you will. They were taking advantage of young, idealistic kids, and because there were no standards put into place, they felt it gave them carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they wanted to these kids' brains. Now, what makes it worse, if that's even possible, is that the students were either incompletely informed about the nature of the experiments, or they were tricked and coerced into remaining in them. They couldn't even get out of the study if they wanted to. Now, being that these procedures were designed to break enemy agents, as this was designed to be implemented with people captured during the Cold War, and render these agents so completely damaged that they would be operationally useless, it is reasonable to expect that the same would have been rendered, or the same consequences would have been rendered on these vulnerable young students who did not have specialized training to resist these sorts of interrogations. The methodologies that were implemented on these young students were designed to be used against foreign agents that were captured in the Cold War. But these foreign agents knew the risks of going out and being a field agent and had probably received some training associated with how not to break under pressure. However, these college kids had none of that. They were lambs laid out for the slaughter. And here's the wildest thing that I came to understand. This might have also been why Ted wanted me to do the research and not to rely on his sharing of it. Who subsidized these experiments? The CIA. As part of their MK Ultra mind control program. Notable, one could say. Very notable, one could say. So let's explore. What was this about behind the veil? Because here we have the three-dimensional explanation of getting these young, impressionable kids to sign up for these studies under the guise that they're special, and then having their world beliefs completely eviscerated. What was this really about? So this was shown to me as the universities were looking for the best and the brightest students. The purpose of this experiment was to take a peek inside someone's soul and at their willingness, right? Because these kids, it wasn't like they had to be coerced into doing the program, to being part of the experiment. They wanted to do the experiment because it was under the guise that they were special. The coercion came later on when they actually didn't want to participate in it anymore. So this is where the university, or a better way of saying it is the CIA, was getting a look inside of someone's soul and their mind because they were made to feel special by participating. And once the students had turned the essays in, and which the people that were running these experiments could come to understand what was their value system, one of two things would happen. Because again, these are the best and brightest. Not just the best and brightest like in every university. It's the best and brightest in what was perceived to be the most elite institution, Harvard University. Okay, so it's the best and the brightest. Now, one of two things would happen once they came to understand the value system of the student. Number one, if this particular student valued success and material gains in the three-dimensional, after graduating, they would be recruited, quote unquote. However, they would be being recruited so they could be locked down with a cushy, high-paying job where they would be thinking they were making some sort of a contribution, and that they must be considered valuable because they were being so well compensated. However, they were being recruited, or rather inserted, into a job with a lot of red tape and bureaucracies in which nothing ever would really get done. And these students might, on some level, be okay with it. They feel like they're making a contribution. They feel like they're valuable and they're meaningful, because why else would I be being paid so much if I wasn't? Maybe nothing's really going to get done, but they still feel like they're making a meaningful contribution. Number two. But for those that were deemed to be remarkable, but not controllable, and were also idealistic and highly intelligent, and somebody that had an absence of attraction to materialism in the 3D, these were the people that could actually create change. So these were the students that they had to break. They had no attachment to material 3D gains. So you couldn't insert them into a cushy, high-paying job where they weren't going to actually get anything done, because they weren't interested in the cushy, high-paying 3D job. They didn't want to be inserted into a job where nothing was actually going to get done. They were the students that were idealistic, highly intelligent, and not controllable. So these were the students that they had to break. They had to shatter them into a million pieces so that there was no amount of glue that would put them back together again. They had to so fully and completely break these people on a fundamental level that they would be unable to make an actual difference in the world, because they were the ones that actually can. And Ted fell into the second category. Highly intelligent, highly idealistic, wanted to change the world, had a very strong belief system in the evils that were going on and being perpetrated in the world. Wanted to make a difference, but he wasn't controllable. So they had to break him. That's what the study was actually about, behind the veil. Thus began Ted's downward spiral. It was the origin point he had experienced in feeling that people are not safe, and therefore he wanted to not be around people so they could not hurt him again. But don't forget, he was still incredibly idealistic and wanted to see fundamental changes playing out in the world. However, he was now experiencing the world as a cruel place in which cruel things can happen. So he then turned his attention onto the corporations that he believed were promoting the evils of modern day society and the destruction of nature. And what were those organizations and corporations? Universities and airlines. 2% personal opinion here, but in what we have now come to understand, universities are essentially paid propaganda institutions, perhaps he was onto something, but he was way ahead of his time. Now, in case anybody was wondering, what were the three-dimensional explanations in why he was apprehended? This is what was shown to me. He had written a 35,000 word manifesto, and it was sent to, I forget what newspaper. He sent it to a newspaper and he was seeking to have it be published. But again, understand, this is not somebody that was wanting it to be published because he wanted the attention for the bombings. This was really his effort in trying to get the information that he believed was necessary out there to people, right? Give people the information and let them decide for themselves. Now, the FBI had encouraged the newspaper to publish his manifesto, which resulted in Ted's brother recognizing the cadence or the language that Ted used and called the tip in that led to him being considered a suspect. It was at this time that I had asked Ted how he felt about his brother being the one that had turned him in. And he shared with me that at this point in his life, he had experienced a series of betrayals and that he genuinely wasn't even surprised. A dark expanse. He really had to compartmentalize himself so he could survive in a world that no longer felt safe for him to survive in. Now, what I had found particularly interesting, one of the things that I had found to be particularly interesting about Ted is that he had always maintained his sanity, and he had constantly clashed with his attorneys because they were urging him to plead insanity so that he would avoid the death penalty. However, at every turn, he rejected this. So instead, he chose to plead guilty, not even stand a trial whatsoever, and accept a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Now, why did he do this? Because he actually had to undergo psychiatric evaluation to see if he was even deemed mentally competent to stand trial. So why did he do this? Again, I'm going to remind you of the fact that he had encouraged me to do my own research into what had happened to him in Harvard so that I would not be influenced. He wanted the information to be shared with the utmost integrity. Give them the information, let them decide for themselves. No bias, right? So why did he choose to plead guilty? It was so that he could preserve the integrity of his work without it being cast as the work of a quote-unquote madman. He knew that if he had pled not guilty by reason of insanity, then all the work that he had shared, in which he was sharing with the aim and goal of trying to wake people up to some of the evils in modern day life, all of his work would immediately be discounted. No one would take his work seriously. And it was too important for him. He felt what he was sharing was too important. He could never have his work be labeled the work of a madman. And that him choosing to plead guilty, not guilty by reason of insanity, would forever taint the integrity of the work, his work. And he could not have that. I'm also going to share with you, while it's not necessarily relevant to the bombing itself, I found him to be very, very delightful energetically, and I had actually discovered something about him that I thought was particularly amusing, and I wanted to share it with you, which was he was sent while he was incarcerated, which, by the way, he received 8 consecutive life sentences. So he was never going to be paroled under any circumstance. The Harvard alumni had sent a letter to him, and they asked if he wanted to be included in their alumni association. So under his occupation, he had listed prisoner, and under accomplishments, he had written received 8 consecutive life sentences. He was clever. He was kind of funny. He was clever. So, you might be wondering, what did Ted have to say about all that stuff that I had researched? What did he want to share about it? Behind the veil, now that I got to have the unbiased explanation of what he had endured and why they were doing those kind of studies, what did he have to say about it? This is what he shared. Now that he has crossed over, because again, he had passed away just last month on June 10th, 2023. So now that he has passed over and he has an elevated vantage point, he shared with me that on a soul level, he understands he agreed to come into this incarnation and to endure the hurts he had. And that the experiences were designed to turn him into a monster, quote unquote. And why did he agree to come into this incarnation and to endure the hurts that he had, to be turned into a so-called monster? So that, this is him sharing with me, so that he could shine a light on the broken world. But no, this is not him playing victim or shifting the blame. The broken world is the evils that he felt were being perpetrated out against the world by modern society, by modern corporations. Here's why. He wanted me to share with you, first and foremost, even look at the way that he had been locked up. He was in a super max prison. This is not like, there's different like levels, there's different like tiers in prisons. There's like the country club version, which is where it's very, very lackadaisical. There's ample grounds. This is like the low-level offenders, right? Ample grounds, they can come and go. I mean, they can't leave, but like they can walk outside, they can walk inside. It's not like they're really, really locked down. It's more like country club jail. Then there's like the regular association that people would have about a jail, where there's different corridors, and when they get to a corridor, the one behind them has to lock before they open the other one, and they have set times that they eat and set times that they can go outside. Then there's the Supermax. The Supermax prisons are the ones, or specifically the one that he had went to, I believe was in Colorado. These are the ones that are underground. And these inmates do not see the light of day. That's number one. Number two, they are so completely confined and restricted with all of their movements. It is the literal most sense of depriving somebody of freedom. They get these tiny little cells. They get their meals brought to them because they are deemed to be so unsafe, they can't even have like a communal lunch. So they're basically confined to their cell maybe 23 hours out of 24. Their meals are brought to them. They're restricted and confined to the extreme, and they do not see the light of day. Okay. So he wanted me first and foremost to discuss this with you and share this with you. And that he had shared him being locked up in a Supermax penitentiary a joke. But not as in the prison itself was a joke, or that being locked up was a joke, but that he was locked up in a Supermax penitentiary at all. And here's what he had to say about it. Because if we were to realistically weigh the potential, or the potential threat that somebody could, the potential threat that somebody would pose to another person, is he, right? On the left, we have the Ted Kaczynski. He identified himself as being someone with patience, refinement, and a degree of sophistication in the crimes that he had committed. He was highly intelligent. He was making homemade bombs. Okay? So, someone with patience, refinement, and a degree of sophistication. Now, on the other hand, this is his interpretation. You can have the simple opportunists who take their fix wherever they can find them, or, so like petty, the people that are carrying out like petty crimes, like breaking into cars, breaking into houses when no one's home. They don't maybe mean to cause harm to anybody. However, the crimes that they're perpetrating still have victims. Or he had also lumped into the same category adults that have non-consensual sex with kids. I can't say the word, so that's why I'm calling it what it is. Understand it's a fallacy. There's no such thing as non-consensual sex with kids. They're kids. They can't consent to it. Okay, so you have the adults that are having non-consensual sex with kids, or the grown men that are having non-consensual sex with women. Again, it's the same word, right? Maybe the woman can consent to it, but it's non-consensual. Or somebody that is peddling out, I'm not sure if I could use the word, but it's the acquisition of illicit material that contains photographs of little kids in various states of undress. Not just undress, physical crimes that are being perpetrated against these children, such as the acts of non-consensual sex. And there's videos and photos of it, and this material is being sent all around the world. Okay. So you got the Ted Kaczynskis locked up in the Supermax versus these people that are engaging in completely petty crime, however their crimes have very real consequences, or these people that are engaging in all of these horrific non-consensual sexual acts with minors and adults, and the acquisition and trading of such information. Those people only do minimal time, only to be released and to re-offend. So he wanted to point out to me that the system is incredibly broken. And it is stacked against who? We the people. Because look at it this way. It's kind of like gambling in Las Vegas. And what do they say about gambling in Las Vegas? The house always wins. You're the guest. You're maybe visiting. Maybe you're gonna play some slot machines. Maybe you're gonna play some blackjacks. Maybe you're gonna play some whatever. The house always wins. And anytime somebody wins, it's to give them a little taste of what winning feels like so that they will want to come back and they will want to gamble again because they will be thinking, hot damn, I won $200 at the slot machine. I better sit down on the way to the airport and play a little slot machine too. And then the next thing you know, not only have they lost the $200 that they had won the day before, they lost another $300. You have the people that are winning at blackjack. And they're like so excited. They're like, I'm so good at blackjack. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to play again on my way to the airport. And then they get taken. What does... This is so wild. This is so fucked up. You know how these casinos, this is kind of like an aside because it technically doesn't have anything to do with Ted Kaczynski, but it very much illustrates the way that the systems, all systems, are stacked against us. So you know how the casinos are wired up to fucking wazoo? There are cameras every like 3 feet in casinos. The blackjack tables have cameras on them, right? They can see absolutely everything. They can tell if somebody is counting cards. They can tell if there is what appears to be just a bystander standing at a table watching a game playing out. Maybe they're like, you know, they're giving like a hand signal or like a tugging on the ear, or like they're touching their nose, or they're drinking their drink. And it's to give a sign to somebody that's sitting at the table on the other side of them so that that person can win. Guess the fuck what? The casinos do the exact same thing. They have master card players that are playing at tables with these other people, whether or not there's any symbolism, whether or not it looks like somebody, if they get a hint that somebody is a master card player, they will put somebody that looks like a regular Joe Schmo, they will put that person at that card game to throw that person off and to make sure that that person doesn't fucking win. That's what the casino does. Exactly what they are so afraid we will do, because the house always wins, they themselves are doing it. Interesting and notable, one could say. So, back to what Ted had shared with me, which is that the system is broken and is stacked against we the people. Because just like in gambling in Las Vegas, the house always wins. And we, the people, the regular people in the world, we are viewed as guests in our own home. It could be your literal home, or it could be your home country. Whatever it is, the system, and I would use the word in this case, even though this is not the word he had shared with me, I would use the word the Cabal. The way the Cabal views us is that we are guests, not inside their home, we are guests inside of our own home. And that's why the system is stacked against us. The chips, if you will, are already stacked against us. So whereas we are being viewed as being guests in our own home, and therefore we have been energetically kicked out of our own home, one could say. However, in this case, the homes are not maybe literal, but it's more with the expectation of us experiencing safety out in the world. We are, however, released into the world or share the world with the people that can do actual harm to the everyday person. Because guess what? The Ted Kaczynskis of the world are not coming after you and me. They're going after people on top. Who are the people that are coming after the everyday people like you and me? Those are the regular everyday perps. And as Ted had pointed out, those were the people that do minimal time only to be released and to re-offend. The chips are indeed stacked against us, big time. So, it's him who went after the people and corporations, and it's him who's locked up in a supermax. Okay, him. It's not the people that are going after women, or going after little kids, or stealing cars, or holding up stores. It's not them that's locked in the Supermax penitentiary. The people that actually pose a threat to the everyday person? No, it's him. This is what he shared. In reality, they locked him up in a Supermax penitentiary because his mind was the kind that was a threat to the establishment, i.e. the Cabal. not the everyday person. So while the streets are full of people that can hurt the everyday person, he's the one that's locked up in a supermax. Okay. Insert eye-rolling emoji here. So look at it this way. Imagine you go to a boxing match and the two fighters come into the ring. In this corner, weighing in at 185 pounds, we have the fighter known as the Unabomber. In this corner, we have weighing in at 165 pounds, the everyday criminal. Now imagine as that bell rings and these two fighters are getting ready to start fighting, they're not actually fighting each other. You have the fighter that goes by the name Unabomber, and he jumps out of the ring. And he goes up to the suits, if you will, or the executives that are coming to watch the match that sit in the front row. And he's gonna have a beef with the fact that they're charging X amount of dollars for the tickets, but they're out of every ticket that they sell, they're getting 85% profit of the sales of the ticket. And then going into all of the corruption and all of the greed, and is this really necessary that we're going to be televising on TV fighting? It's not good for the morale or for citizenship or for anything. Then you have the everyday criminal. And what does he do? He too is jumping out of the ring. What's he going to do? He's going to be running up to the people that have popcorn and whacking under it so the popcorn goes into their face. He's going to go running up to all the people that have drinks, and he's going to be taking the drinks and he's going to be pouring the drinks over their head. He's going to go up to the pretty looking lady, whether she's attached or not. He's going to start hitting on her. He's going to go up to the kids and he's going to start making funny faces and scaring the living shit out of them. So you have the one that's going after a few that are sitting in the front wearing suits, or you have the other one that's going to go harass the many. But the suits in the front are the ones with the power. So they're going to feel like they're the most aggrieved by this, and they're the ones that can actually implement change to punish the fighter. Whereas the other fighter that has gone around terrorizing a great many number of people, the people have no power. So what's going to happen to that fighter? He's going to get maybe like a slap on the wrist. Is he going to get banned from boxing in its entirety? No. Maybe he's going to get like a suspension, 3 boxing matches. The other one's been banned outright. Take it a step further. It's still a boxing match. But this time, the Unabomber fighter, he's not just running up to them and he's starting to yell at them for the evils that they are committing against the population by televising this rubbish. But he says, I have to send a stronger message to them so they understand how egregious this actually is. He's got maybe a knife, he's gonna stab them, that's it. The other fighter, the everyday criminal fighter, he's not just gonna run around terrorizing people in the audience. He also has a knife, or maybe he has a gun. So he's gonna go running around holding that gun to people up, and he's gonna say, give me everything in your wallet. If you don't, I'll kill you. Give me your popcorn, I'm hungry. If you don't, I'll kill you. And instead of just hitting on the pretty ladies in attendance, he's gonna start to accost them and try to take them outside so he can have their way with them. Or maybe he's a different kind of a breed, and it's not the women that he wants, it's the little kids in the audience. And since the parents can't, while they're being terrorized, can't necessarily defend their children, how much easier would it be for him to take the kids? Because that's more akin to what it's like. But again, the inequality of power is the same. So you've got the one fighter that's not going after the many, he's going after the few on top. but because the few on top are the ones with the power, they can punish him more severely. Versus the one that is terrorizing all of the many, causing actual harm, holding them up, taking their actual money, trying to maybe perpetrating very real violence against people. But because the many don't have the power, there's nothing they can do. And that fighter is still going to get the slap on the wrist. You were a very bad boy. You can't fight for the next 3 games. Or maybe you can't fight for the rest of the season. Then we'll let you back. We'll overlook this whole thing. It'll go on your record, sure. Like, there will be some idea that this has happened, but is this really going to haunt you for the rest of your life? No, not really. We'll just let you go back into the boxing ring. You have paid your dues to society by sitting out 3 games or sitting out the season. It's kind of like that. So this is why Ted finds the idea that he's the one in the Supermax penitentiary laughable. He went after the suits with the power, and they don't like it. He would never lay a hand on a woman or a child. He's in the Supermax. So kind of look at it this way. His reaction was kind of like a snort, and he rolled his eyes. Yeah. I'm the one in the Supermax. I never went after the everyday person. In fact, what he was trying to do is to highlight the inequality and the evils that are being perpetrated against us, the everyday man, by big corporations and the inequality in power. So I think maybe you can understand why I found him to be incredibly insightful into the inner workings of the world, where he's taking the elevated approach, which is not that there are injustices that are being meted out to us by these corporations, but where there are injustices being meted out against us by a very broken criminal justice system as well. And who ultimately is paying the price for these injustices? It's, in his opinion and perspective, it's we the people. We the people are not properly being protected from the dangerous offenders that actually mean to cause harm to the everyday person. But when there is an outlier that is making an effort to bring down the establishment, i.e. the Cabal, those are the ones that get locked up in the Supermax. Interesting. Now, it is at this time that my conversation with Ted took a rather unexpected turn, where he wanted to talk with me a little bit more about the soul and the spiritual component, which is as follows. He had shared with me that on a soul level, he can understand why he had to go through the things that he had gone through that had fundamentally changed him, and that was to shape him and mold him in the 3D. But he also wanted me to share a message with anyone who is also experiencing their own hardships in the 3D, which is to take heart, because those of us with the hardest journeys are also the ones that have tremendous importance in their ultimate destinations, and that the fullness of our pain and suffering is ours to transmute and to turn into gold. And also that our experiences are meant for us to develop a strength of character we would not otherwise have. And that the strength of character is designed to either help us evolve faster and become who we are most meant to be in the 3D, or to ascend off the earth plane altogether. Take your hurts, heal them, transmute them into gold, because these experiences are meant for us to either get us to the next version of who we are meant to be, or to get off the earth plane altogether. And because he is no longer on the earth plane anymore, he's sharing it from the elevated viewpoint and the understanding of it. Now, lastly, he wanted me to share this last parting message with you guys. And I have been sneaky. I have been sharing this particular message with my clients without telling them who it came from, lest we would have been carrying the assumption that we got to throw the baby out with the bathwater because he's such a bad guy, and surely, therefore, his message carries no importance for us to take to heart. But also in the understanding, and the reason that I wanted to do this video, which is to share, nothing is quite that black and white. We are so much more than just the sums of our choices and our actions out in the 3D world. And there are so many factors that are comprising the assembly of our character and the choices that we therefore make. So yes, I've been a little bit sneaky about it, and those of you that have had sessions with me, you will know this, because it's something I have shared with you. So his parting words to all of us, with the elevated viewpoint that he has now being on the other side, is as follows. I love this. We are all exactly where we are meant to be. And we know that to be true because it's exactly where we are. Side note, I love it because it's so simple. You don't need to do like mental gymnastics to try to extrapolate the meaning in this. He made it so freaking simple for us. We're exactly where we are meant to be right now. How do we know that? It's because it's where we are. There's nowhere else you're meant to be. There's nothing else you're meant to be doing. You're exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what you're meant to be doing. How do you know? Because it's where you are and it's what you're doing. And that also, there are no mistakes one can ever truly make. And there are also no coincidences as well, only fated encounters. And how do we also know this to be true? Because as we have explored in so many of my other videos, the big soul lessons that we experience in our life, or the big, if you will, actions that we create in our life, are things that we have already agreed to experience or to do in this lifetime. We are not hapless victims being dropped into a pinball machine, being banged around by life. Not even Ted Kaczynski. The experiences that he had endured were not him being banged around by the whatever they're called in the pinball machine. No. These were experiences his soul agreed to have and knew he was going to have. And that these were done to shape him into the person that he was going to turn into. The Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. There are no surprises in life. With the big things. Who you meet on a day-to-day basis, what you eat, what you wear, what you think, what you drink, what you do, that's all free will. But the really, really big notable things, your soul already agreed to it, just like his soul already agreed to it. So he's sharing, there are no mistakes one can ever truly make. You're not making a mistake. You're doing exactly what your soul agreed to do. And that there are no coincidences either, only fated encounters. So lighten up and enjoy the ride. Because if he could, when he was in the Supermax Penitentiary, surely we can as well. So that is my energy read on Ted Kaczynski, the man known as the Unabomber. And as always, guys, I hope that you have found this video to be interesting or thought-provoking. Take what resonates, leave the rest behind, and until next time, stay in the high vibration.